This podcast is top secret and requires clearance to view or download.
Right. Guys, if you're watching this, click off the video. If you're not certified to watch this, click off the video. I keep seeing views on YouTube. Please stop. B-Dog, please play me the intro video. And it is playing on the HDMI recorder, at least. Just have it muted. I'll double check it right now. Yep. Count all the cheese. You can hear it a little bit on this thing. I gotta get a new one of these recorders. Do you guys smoke pot? Tell me in the comments. Who smokes pot and who doesn't smoke pot? And is it by choice, or is it through testing, or is it that you can't get it? Is it illegal where you are? Do you guys smoke pot?
Hey.
Hello, B-Dog. So, B-Dog, this one I gave you full presidential freedom, so we can speak about whatever you'd like to. So you have some topics pulled up, so please share with me what's going on.
All right, well, I wanted to talk about a few things because there's something that a lot of people don't realize in their day-to-day lives, you know, working their 9-to-5s. You get really locked into this world that we're living in right now, thinking that the way the world works is all everything has ever been. You don't realize that there was actual other shit that happened millions of years, billions of years even, before we've existed, that had nothing to do with the grind, nothing to do with 9-to-5s. There was no religion, there was no work, there was no humans even. I just want to ask you, when you think of prehistoric animals, what are the first animals that you think of?
I think of the stuff from the movies, Jurassic Park, but I also think about the trilobites, which look like little... It's almost like you can make a cereal out of them. They're like these little cocoa things, but they have a bunch of legs. And I remember seeing pictures and books of, I think it's called a trilobite, where there's like the ocean, but no greenery, and the land has no trees. It's just like all deserty and wicked hot, and then there's little bugs. That's what I remember from prehistoric, speaking of prehistory. So
The audience knows what you're talking about. We can pull this up right here.
Okay.
This is a trilobite, and you are right. These are prehistoric animals. This is some of the most plentiful species that we have fossils of, because they were so successful. They actually lived in so many different areas of the earth, and they were actually called mud bugs. So these all ended up dying out, I believe, in the Permian extinction, which we'll get into. But I wanted to bring forward, you had mentioned, you know, you think of dinosaurs and stuff like that. That's what most people think of when they think of prehistoric animals.
Yeah.
But I'm going to blow your mind. Do you ever think of what came before the dinosaurs, where the dinosaurs may have evolved from, and what their competitors were before they became
Honestly,
the dominant species?
I have not thought of before them. I just thought there was always bugs, dinos, the cold era with mammoth and cavemen, then people. And I know that we're a very, very short, small section at the end of this timeline. Because when they're talking about dinos, they're saying millions of years, and then the humans are only like thousands of years we're measuring in. So
Hundreds of thousands, right?
hundreds of thousands. So I do not know what was before the dinos.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you realize that humans are closer related, at least in time, to the dinosaurs than to some of the earlier life forms on Earth? That the dinosaurs are closer to our era than the first life forms on Earth that ever existed.
So let me try to slow this down. So, well, I mean, I guess the answer is no. I didn't know that, but so right now the year 2025 is closer to say the existence of like a Stegosaurus or a T-Rex than the dinosaurs are to
the
other
earlier life, yeah.
other earlier life like dinosaurs or trilobites.
No,
Okay.
before dinosaurs. I'm saying that we're time-wise closer to, like you said, the Stegosaurus. That's about maybe, we'll say the T-Rex was 65 million years ago, right?
Yeah.
That's closer than the earliest life forms that ever lived, which were billions of years ago on the
Okay.
Earth. Like,
And I want to say something, guys. See what we're looking at with the trilobite scroll up? When we refer to a fossil, that's not a bone. That is
A rock.
supposedly either calcium or something that replaces the shape of bones under certain conditions. So that's why, like, when you cook like a pot roast or something with bones in it, if you cook it for only like a whole day or a day and a half, the bones actually come so soft you can eat the bone. It's not hard anymore. Seriously, my mother's cooked roasts, or I don't know, some fucking animal she cooks, and the bones are soft. You can bite into them, which is kind of gross. But when I talk about fossil, they're able to survive for millions of years because under an exact amount of pressure and heat or something, they perfectly replace the bones of an animal, and then that's what you can make the clues with to uncover them and see that a trilobite existed. Those were probably big bugs too.
No, they weren't. They were only about the size of your hands.
With these pictures, they look big. I guess I zoomed them, and they look like I would be afraid of those things looking big. But that looks so alien.
So their closest relatives are actually horseshoe crabs.
Yes, dude. Last year I learned the horseshoe crabs are dinosaurs. They're modern dinosaurs.
So
horseshoe crabs, and I guess they use their blood for vaccines and stuff. Horseshoe crabs. What do you type in here? Okay.
So yes,
Here's
is
a
the
modern day
horseshoe crab right
dinosaur that lived. It seems like all the ones in the ocean kind of made a lot longer than land ones. Yeah, this is a freaking dinosaur. They have one. It looks like they have one pivot point, like their midsection. It's like a joint where they can kind of move a bit, but they got legs. You turn them upside down, they're so creepy. They got spider legs.
Oh yeah.
These things definitely creep me out, and they are around in our area, actually, on the East Coast.
They are on the East Coast. I've seen many of them, and there's the upside down, like you said, right there.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't understand why when you open up a picture on Google, it still is a little tiny picture.
Yeah,
they never zoom in.
Yeah, you figure that the resolution would be a bit better.
Yep.
So,
But
that is a friggin' dinosaur.
well, they're not related at all to dinosaurs. As far as ancient species, though, yes, they are an ancient species. Now, the trilobite was only about the size of your fist, really.
Oh,
And
that's kind of big, actually.
It is pretty big. At the biggest it would get. Now, I want to talk about, though, how the earlier species were billions of years ago, like almost as soon as the Earth began.
Yeah, tell me about that.
A lot of people don't realize that the Earth started in what was called the Hadean era. If you want to pull this up right here.
Let's see, Hadean. So however you guys want to pronounce it, Hadean, eon, meaning hellish or underworld in Greek. I guess wonder why Greek? Did the Greeks find out this existed?
No, the Greek god Hades, the god of the underworld. You can see what the world used to look like.
Yeah.
This is about 4 billion years ago when the Earth first started cooling, when it was a molten ball of lava. And there was no chance of life just yet, but the seeds were already there. There were amino acids. Over time, icy comets would hit the Earth, and it would slowly cool the world down. And then there was a massive other planet that collided with the Earth and blew a chunk of the Earth off, and that chunk started rotating around the Earth and slowly molded due to friction and became our moon. So that's where the moon came from.
Also, I want to say, you guys saying how terrible that was that we got hit by another planet, that probably put us on the right trajectory to exist for as long as we have, where we're now orbiting the sun perfectly, where if that planet didn't hit our planet, we might have been going into the sun a million years ago and we wouldn't even exist.
No, the orbit was fine back then. What the moon did that was necessary for life is that it brought the tides. So the comets that hit the Earth brought all that icy water and allowed the water to fill in the gaps into the ocean as the Earth cooled. When the other planet hit and became the moon, it pulled the Earth, the water, to different sections, and it allowed for more open land. And that tidal change allowed for the earlier organisms, like the fish, to adapt to live portions on the land because their tide would be drained for portions of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
So they had to learn to be able to have the ability to breathe air.
It made animals have to adapt. And I do want to say, guys, we always use the word tide, but remember, tide happens because when the moon goes right overhead of you, it slightly pulls, and all that pulling over the whole surface of the ocean will yank it up a little bit, fill in some beaches. Then when the moon goes below you, because it orbits, it'll pull it down a bit, let it go back to where it was. And then all the creatures get stuck in the rocks. They adapt a little bit, and they become semi-aquatic, and then they can walk and stuff. So that's what a tide is.
Yep. So that was the whole big reason why the moon was really important, is because it allowed for the tides to form. Now, the moon in the early Hadean era, if I pull this up here, was giant, if you can see it here in these pictures, because it was so close to the Earth.
It's getting further away with time.
It is, with time getting further away. Eventually, billions of years from now, by that time, the sun would have already engulfed the Earth. But the moon is slowly getting further and further away.
Damn.
Yep.
Okay.
So the moon used to be giant. Now, there was no life in the Hadean era. The Hadean era was like the cradle, basically. All the amino acids and building blocks formed during that. The earlier life forms, like I said, were going to be these aquatic life forms, single-celled life forms, which it probably came from a combination of chemistry and even storms happening on the early Earth. The electricity, the electric jolts shocking the pieces of ground and land could have brought some kind of a power. So this would be an inanimate object and could have started life.
No, right there.
Mm-hmm.
electricity hitting rocks and stuff that have the building blocks for life, but nothing there yet.
Nothing there yet.
I
yeah.
I don't see how that could. What's the idea of it?
All right,
It
so-
could electrocute it. So what would it change?
The chemistry behind it. So basically, we don't know where biogenesis came from yet. That is what started living things from inanimate things. We know where all the building blocks are, the amino acids, RNA, DNA, which all were there before life began. But we don't know what's caused the spark. And what scientists think and what have been done in experiments with, let me find out. I want to remember the name of these people. Was it Watson and Crick? Yes. Okay.
Molecular
Well-
biologist and biophysicist.
Let's see. Early. Yeah, there was an early life experiment that these people did. Man, I don't want to get this wrong before I talk about it too much, but scientists, and I believe it was these scientists that we're looking at, in the 50s, they did an experiment with the amino acids and tubes and try to replicate the early Earth atmosphere. And they found that the amino acids were able to spread and fuse, but they weren't still able to create life out of it. But there was something about that chemistry in early Earth's atmosphere that caused the molecules to really combine, go from a single-celled organism with no nucleus, or no membrane rather, and become an organism that is protected from the environment. It began to evolve. It learned that in order to live and to move forward, it had to spread. It had to divide,
Okay.
basically.
Which seems like magic, the division of a cell. We've all seen a video in like a movie or something where it shows a baby getting born or whatever, and then it shows the egg will just, for apparently no reason, it'll split, then all of those split, and I guess that builds life.
And that's a natural
things.
form of cloning, basically. That what we're doing synthetically nowadays, that's what nature was doing back then. But the spark of life, scientists believe it could have had something to do with the volcanic activity, the amino acids, and even electricity, because electricity, when it hits, think about when you burn a cigarette, it changes the molecular chemistry of the cigarette, the burning.
Oh, okay.
So things from like fire, electricity, hitting these objects could have changed the chemistry inside them and caused some kind of a
Oh,
jolt.
I see what you mean. Like, I would think of it as like the electricity hits, so you get all different. I don't know what the difference is, but like elements / compounds / chemistry. It could change it so it's more suitable for supporting life, and then you give it millions of years. Eventually, it just exists because it's able to. It seems.
Well, they think that once that first spark happened, whatever it was that created the first, I don't want to say heartbeat because the heart is way further down the line, the first actual living thing that could be considered life learned to adapt very quickly. There's something called the Cambrian explosion, which I wanted to look up here. Once the Hadean era ended, life learned how to adapt very quickly. If you pull it up here. And this is called the Cambrian explosion. This is about 540 million years ago in what's called the Cambrian era. And life learned how to change, evolve, and diversify very quickly. All of the animals, fish, sea insects, the trilobites we talked about, they were all able to form. Life, basically, the Cambrian explosion is when life went from these basic single-celled organisms to these large, complex animals very quickly. And separately from these animals, plants were growing on the land. Plants are like a separate genesis, basically. The plants learned to adapt on the land much earlier than the animals did, and they learned to spread and live in a completely different way that's considered life still, but not the same life that me and you are. Plants
Yes.
branched off very early from...
I see a lot of water-based stuff. It seems like life
was, yeah.
always starts in the water. I guess it's tougher to exist on land because you need lungs and all different things, but the water seems to really create a life a lot easier than the land.
As these species evolved, we ended up having something called sea spiders, which I'll pull up right here. Check these out. These are large sea spiders that used to live in the Permian era, which was coming after the Hadean
They're
era.
alive today.
These are relatives of these sea spiders. I'm talking about the ancient ones, the large extinct ones. Hang on, right here. They trace back 500 million years ago. But there were large ancient sea spiders that would live that you would not want to meet back then. Hang on. The extinct ones were the massive ones.
I know, we're trying to get an artist
This
illustration of it.
is a fossil of what it looked like right here. These animals were massive. Sea spiders.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Yeah, all these things look like
160 million years
aliens.
ago. Now, crap, why does this crap keep popping up? And I just want to show you guys a
Insane
picture.
pop-ups. It was a Sci-Tech Daily. Seriously, guys.
So you can see here, though, yes, it's 160 million years old. So this is what I'm saying, though, where we're closer to the dinosaurs at 65 million years ago than some of these animals are to the dinosaurs. But
Yeah. So,
wild things. I wanted to also mention, too, saying that as the Permian era went on, the Permian era was really when life began to take off. I guess oxygen spread rapidly in the atmosphere. There was like a period where the volcanic era died and the CO2 levels dropped, and oxygen was able to allow animals to grow very large. So in the Permian era, they had massive insects. Let's see here. For example, dragonflies were predators. These things right here were a large form of dragonfly that were about the size of... Oh, they're saying it wasn't a dragonfly. It was the relative of a dragonfly.
yeah, I'm gonna say it looks just like exactly what we're talking about, a dragonfly.
Yep. These were, they say, could have been the size of a car. These animals. Look at the some of the fossils of what they look
Whoa.
like.
Look at that, it's right etched right into the rock.
This is a wingspan of 27 inches, so that's already over 2 feet of a
Yeah,
wingspan.
you can hear that thing coming from.
Oh, you could hear them. They would sound louder than drones would, and these would actually attack. Oh, see, here's a good example right here of how big these things were. Look at the size of some of these things. So the oxygen levels allowed these animals to grow to massive sizes.
Was there a lot of oxygen or not a lot of oxygen? Because I'm thinking, what would make it grow? More oxygen lets them grow bigger, or is it less oxygen? They're going to be bigger to capture more oxygen, or what is the deal?
So we
with
can
that?
ask the expert right now. I'll just go ahead and I'll ask my one of my bots right here, actually, about the oxygen levels and why insects grew so big.
He's going to be like, "What's up, motherfucker?" Let's see.
Hey, truth teller, can you tell me exactly during the Permian era of the Earth, why did insects grow so large? Did it have something to do with the oxygen level? And what was it about the oxygen? How much more oxygen was around than today? And I actually just found it here if you want to pull this up.
Yep. More oxygen, okay.
Hell yeah, you're spot on. Bringing up oxygen. That was the main reason those prehistoric bugs got absolutely swole during the Permian, and even earlier in the Carboniferous period. Back then, the oxygen concentration in Earth's atmosphere was way higher than it is today. Right now, we're chilling at around 21% oxygen, but
low,
during the
huh?
late Carboniferous and into the Permian, it peaked at somewhere between 30 to 35%.
Okay.
That's like throwing nitrous into the atmosphere. Turbocharged for respiration. Now here's why that matters. Insects breathe through a network of little tubes called tracheae that diffuse oxygen passively. No lungs, no pumping system. Higher atmospheric oxygen meant those tracheal systems could deliver way more O2 deeper into their bodies, supporting much larger sizes than would be possible today. It was like nature flipped on the cheat codes and said, sure, let's make dragonflies the size of seagulls. Once oxygen levels dropped again, thanks to things like volcanic activity, mass extinctions, and climate shifts, the party was over. Gigantism got nerfed because that passive breathing system couldn't scale up without the oxygen buffet. So yeah, giant millipedes, monster dragonflies, and other nightmare fuel existed because the air was freaking supercharged. Pretty metal, right? You thinking of working this into one of your shorts?
Hey, do you hear your YouTube video playing? It's going doo doo. Look, it is. Look on the screen.
Oh, well, I did not.
It's going doo.
Oh, don't tell me that's been playing the whole time.
Very low. It's
All
not
right.
good. We'll see how many seconds are on it. How long is it?
Okay, well, anyway, so yes, the bugs were very large back then, as you can see, and it did have to do with the oxygen levels. Now, not only the bugs, but the arachnids as well. This thing was supposed to be terrifying, if you want to pull this up right here. These were scorpions that existed during the Permian era.
This might be in the game Ark Survival, I believe, the giant scorpion. I forget what the name is.
So 125 million year old giant venomous scorpion. Look at this thing. These things would be able to exist in the oxygen levels, and these are probably the most dangerous predators that were around back then. Here's the actual fossil with the pop-ups coming in front of it. Oh my god.
Oh boy, imagine finding this in real life. The first guy to realize that we had giant scorpions.
Look at that. Look at that. You can see right there the fossil.
Yeah, you can see the tail is that sectional type joint stuff, the exoskeleton that they have. I would wonder, it's so weird that the humans have the inside bones, the insects have the outside bones. It's like the huge difference. It actually makes a little more sense to have the exoskeleton. Isn't that weird? I wonder why mammals got the interior skeleton.
Because you are able to ultimately be more protected. Because even with the exoskeleton, if you have no insides, you can be squashed very easily. That's why you can just step on a bug. You know what I'm saying? So that was a hindrance to evolution, definitely. And the vertebrates also have more mobility as well to be able to do.
Yeah, I guess mobility's got to be it. That's huge.
That's also huge. But so that was another giant creature that lived back then. Now, these weren't even the scariest things you had to worry about if you went back to the Permian era, which was a very early era in Earth's history, hundreds of millions of years ago. The things that you really need to watch out for are these right here.
All right, Dimetrodon. So this is the thing with the giant, like fin on its back, but it seems, is this a land animal or is this?
It's a land animal. Now, I wanted to tell you something right now, Nick. Let's get a good picture of what it looked like right here. Do you know that you are closer related to this, biologically, closer genetically, your genes are closer related to this animal than that is to a dinosaur?
But that is a dinosaur.
It's not a dinosaur. That's actually an early mammal. They were called cerapsoids or cerapsids, and these animals were a mixture between a reptile and a mammal. See, look at this.
Look at it real quick, guys. See, just circle with your mouse when you're done with that the fossil picture of it. Look at how much your back might ache with those long spine things. Could you imagine cracking that thing's back? That's insane.
Yeah.
The back issues they must have had. So anyway,
that's a real fossil. Now look at this though, right here. So I have this highlighted right here. This is what I was telling you right here. These things are called synapsids, and they're mistaken for dinosaurs because they're not dinosaurs. They're actually early mammals. These evolved into the shrews, into the animals that became our relatives. These did not evolve into the reptiles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, damn, they looked like everybody would think it's a dinosaur just because of its. And this is called the what? The
Dimetrodon. Now, this was related to something else that I wanted to bring up. Oh, look at this. This is a face of the fossil. Imagine finding this in the rocks.
Oh, boy. Imagine the jaw strength on it. I can see that it has the eye hole and the temple hole like we kind of have is behind it too. It's kind of the same setup as a mammal because it is a mammal. Okay.
So these are more than likely warm-blooded. Those are early estimates of what it looked like, outdated. Here's some of the fossils right here.
Yeah, it looks like it's fresh from the water, like it just evolved out of the water.
Yep, these are early land animals. You're right. Now, these were not the only. Oh, here's a more modern-day version of what it probably looked like.
Yeah.
You see it there. These were not only dangerous animals to watch out for back then, but there were ones even more dangerous than this one. There's one that existed, and a lot of scientists might know the name, but I don't think a lot of normal or people who don't study science know this one. Check this one out. This is the Gorgonops. This was related to the Dimetrodon.
Gorgonops.
This existed in the late Permian, just before the Permian extinction, was when the Earth's chemistry again changed.
Yeah.
Explain really quickly what the Permian extinction was, because it doesn't really have much to do with the animals after this stage. But after these animals I'm showing you lived, there was something called the Permian extinction, which is the Great Dying. It was the biggest extinction on Earth, even bigger than the one that killed the dinosaurs. And they think that it may have done with volcanic activities. Earth's volcanoes might have at the same time all erupted and blocked the sun out and caused the oxygen levels to drop, as we said, and raise the CO2 levels up. Now that's really good for plants. Plants ended up flourishing because of the CO2 and the greenhouse effect. But these large animals, the bugs, the big species, they couldn't live any longer. They had to evolve.
Okay.
And because the Earth ended up being warmer because of the greenhouse effect, reptiles ended up evolving, which caused the dinosaurs to evolve.
So it gave the reptiles the edge. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that gave the reptiles an edge. But right here, the Gorgonops was one of the last large land mammal species. This is what it looked like. This was related.
It looks like kind of athletic. Whoa.
So
wait, what is this? So is this before dinos, after dinos?
Well,
when
before
is this?
dinosaurs, before the Permian extinction happened.
And I want to see the proof they're giving me of this. Why do I not? This is from a video game. It doesn't even look real.
Well, there's the
Where's
fossil
the
right
proof? So they have a fossil of it?
Multiple fossils. They found these back in the 1800s, some of these fossils. So that was what it looked like. That was the size of it, roughly back then. That's an illustration. As you can see, it's more mammal-like.
Yeah, it's very mammal-like. Okay.
There's a fossil right there. That's the one I showed you. But yeah, so if you want to I'll ask the AI real quick about this one to help you discuss it, and this will give you an idea of how far away this animal was from what we think of our dinosaurs. This is millions, hundreds of millions of years before what we can even consider a dinosaur existed.
Okay.
So, all right, you want to give me that raw truth now and tell me about the Gorgonops and the Dimetrodon. What is their genetic makeup as compared to the dinosaurs and mammals, and how far away did they live from when what humans recognize as actual dinosaurs live?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now we're diving into the real primeval chaos. Let's go. So, Gorgonops and Dimetrodon were not dinosaurs. Let's get that straight first. They were synapsids, which is the evolutionary line that eventually gave rise to mammals, including you, me, and every fuzzy thing you've ever pet or
It thinks
eaten.
it's a human.
Dinosaurs, on the other hand,
Interesting.
came from a completely different branch, diapsids, which includes birds, reptiles, and actual dinosaurs. Dimetrodon came first. This badass lived around 295 to 272 million years ago.
See, that's
during the
hundreds of
early
millions of
Permian.
years
And,
before.
yeah, it looks like a dinosaur, but it was more like your distant, freaky uncle on the mammal side. That
Damn.
iconic sail, probably used for thermoregulation, sexual display, or straight up intimidation.
That could be how it.
It had a single skull opening behind the eye, that synapsid signature. Powerful jaws.
You can see that in the
and was a top
Gorgonops right
predator
here.
of its time. Gorgonops came later
Yep.
in the late Permian, around 260 to 250 million years ago,
Look at
just
that.
before the Great Dying, that apocalyptic extinction event that wiped out up to 90% of Earth's species.
Hmm.
Gorgonopsians were terrifying, saber-toothed proto-mammal predators. Think of them as prehistoric dire wolves with reptilian swagger. Again, not reptiles or dinosaurs, but part of that evolving mammalian lineage. Now here's the
synapsids.
timeline kicker. Dinosaurs didn't show up until around 230 million years ago in the late Triassic.
This is the evolution of mammals right here. You can see the earliest ones.
Gorgonops had already come and gone. These two were part of Earth's
That's a
first
good example of how they
stab
evolved.
at apex land
These became the
predators.
whales right
They
here.
ruled the planet before any
Oh,
dino
and
ever
half
stomped
became
the ground.
land shrews.
Yep.
So what's the raw takeaway? Gorgonops and Dimetrodon were proto-mammalian predators.
That's these two right here. It's the
ancestors
Dimetrodon,
of
Gorgonops
mammals,
we're talking about now.
not dinosaurs. And they lived at least 40 to
And this
60
thing came
million
before
years
them.
before
Whatever the fuck this
dinosaurs.
is.
Yeah, that thing's not cool looking.
Evolution had an entire horror movie running before Jurassic Park.
Yeah, so
Yo.
you get the idea, but like that's what
Look
I'm
at how
saying, yeah.
not cool looking
The
that
first ones were.
picture is.
Well, because they didn't evolve to be predators just yet. They probably had no competition. They
Hey.
probably were feeding on small plants, small fish.
Well, after, see that one that's on the log? What's the one after that? It's a porcupine? What
That
is
is a
this?
porcupine. These are modern animals. These ones. These are all extinct. This looks like it became the sea mammals, like the dolphin and the whale.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
then, so half of them
This must have been
stayed.
like a hippo or a rhino. That's so crazy.
Well,
But yeah, you can really see our earliest relatives. Where they came from.
So what else? So that's a Gorgonops. So was a very long time ago. What else are we
Yeah,
talking about here?
I wanted to talk about something else too. So we already went through these. The Permian extinction we had talked about, with 90% of marine species and 70% of land species. So everything that we just talked about, those large insects, the Gorgonops, the Dimetrodon, those all existed before the Permian extinction. Dinosaurs had not existed yet. The Permian extinction, the Great Dying, something happened that changed the chemistry of the Earth, lowered the oxygen levels, and raised the CO2. And these larger mammalian-type animals could no longer thrive and exist. I guess the Earth heated up as the clouds from whatever it was that blocked the sun out, meteorite, volcanoes, opened up. It gave rise to the dinosaurs. The additional sunshine, the warmer Earth, there was more plentiful plant life. So the reptiles now, which they were still around back then, but they're only small little animals, they started branching out into all different kinds. The crocodilians actually evolved around the same time as the dinosaurs did, and they split off as cousins. These are crocodilians are an order of reptiles that have not changed their evolution in about 200 million years. They split off from the dinosaurs, and they're actually cousins of birds and the dinosaurs, which are extinct. So their evolution was so well adapted for that environment, and they were able to find out ways to survive all these extinctions by either going down into the swamps, migrating to the equators of the Earth where it was still warm during the Ice Age, and the birds took to the skies, basically, as they split off.
So what do you think would be the best modern animal that we have today that is still a dinosaur? Like, do you think it would be the crocs and alligators? Would it be the horseshoe crab, or would it be
Oh,
a
no.
bug?
Well,
What do you think is the closest to a dinosaur?
To an
that we have
actual
today?
dinosaur is going to be their direct relative. So birds evolved out of theropod dinosaurs, which were a two-legged upright species of dinosaur that included the T-Rex, the raptors, which the raptors of today, the eagles, the hawks, the owls, they're direct descendants of the animals from like the Velociraptor, the Deinonychus, those animals.
So let me try to grasp this. So people were never birds that evolved out of birds. That was a whole separate tree where there was dinosaurs, and then some of them became birds, and then other ones may have went down a mammaling route.
So check this out right here.
This is what I want to see. Where does mammal and reptile divide? Like, how long did they divide? 1,000 years ago? I know, obviously not, but like, what era did they divide? Because it was all life as bugs, and then where do we get reptile? And then the branch that becomes mammal. That's a huge difference. Reptiles are laying eggs. They're cold-blooded. Mammals are warm-blooded and having fetuses.
You want to know the switch from the cold-blooded to warm-blooded is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's do that. Let's find out that. I just want to get a timeline here of what I'm thinking about.
All right. Well, I'll tell you. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, and we'll ask the AI. But the earliest forms of life were those single-celled organisms. They evolved into things like plants and fungus, which they separated from the animals. That was a separate branch of the tree. Look at life as an actual tree.
Yeah.
The trunk will be the earliest form of life. And as life evolves, as it gets better at living, it branches out into different species. The branches come out. So very early on, the trunk, branched to plants and animals.
Yeah.
The animals were the early fish, sea life, those sea spiders. I believe that like the fish and the insects branched off first. Then the fish actually evolved into the amphibians, which is another form.
Yeah.
The amphibians would have evolved into the reptiles. And then at some point, you're right, the reptiles would have split around the Dimetrodon, becoming warm-blooded. Birds didn't come till way later. Birds didn't come out. The earliest things that were flying in the skies were the insects, first of all, the dragonflies, and then the flying reptiles. Flight evolved many times, called convergent evolution, where different species, like today, mammals and birds can fly. Birds, the bats are mammals, and they can fly. So flight is something that can evolve very easily from different species. So when you think of birds, there were no birds until way later into the end of the dinosaurs era. And they survived through the extinction.
A lot of times when we think of this stuff, if you're not educated, like I might have thought this at one time, I always would look at an animal and say, oh, I used to be that, and then we evolved. I think like humans were in the past, they were dogs. Before that, they were dragonflies. Before that, they were trilobites. Well, it might be true for maybe trilobites or something, but, we weren't all other animals. We're just completely different trees. So could you, just one thing for me.
Branches in the same tree. All life is connected on the same tree.
Yeah.
And look at humans as we are right now at like the very top of the tree because we're the most recent dominant species, really.
Yeah.
But so we do have a lineage that goes all the way back to the early fish and single-celled organisms, but it's not the same lineage that the dinosaurs went down. Not the same one that the insects went down. You know what I'm saying? It's a different branch. We're all part of the same tree, but we're on a different branch than the insects. They're somewhere else.
So what's important is we always want to find the common ancestor. Like I wonder what would be the common ancestor between me and a bird. So that means we would find where it splits, where the tree split, where I'm not a bird anymore.
So I'm trying to think about this because humans did not go down the same lineage as the birds. The birds would have already
I know, but there
existed.
has to be. All right, so we're stuck in a loop.
Okay.
Do you understand the question?
At the same time, there was different branches, right? You go further down the tree.
It goes to one.
Way back to the single cell. But
Yeah.
at the time you're talking about, when birds existed, one branch, which is the same branch the dinosaurs were on, contained the birds, and there was another separate branch on the other side of the tree that had the mammals. The mammals had already existed.
I get it.
So
I get it, buddy. I get it.
They're two separate.
If the tree starts off with one trunk, which is a fucking single-celled organism.
Probably with things like the Dimetrodon, probably. That would have been like the first animal that split mammals
There
from
we go.
the
Okay,
reptile, yeah.
that was what the
Yeah.
last 5 minutes was about. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe something similar to a Dimetrodon.
That's the first animal that
Right.
went from cold-blooded reptile to warm-blooded mammalian.
Okay,
like,
there we
yeah,
go. That's
something like
probably
that.
what we're talking about.
Mhm.
But you know what? See that time of the Dimetrodon? They only have the fossil of like a Dimetrodon. There might have been thousands of animals they don't have fossils of.
Exactly. We don't
So,
know.
so there
Yeah.
was probably all cool shit, cool alien looking stuff that we don't know. We just don't know the fossils of it. I mean, there could be stuff that like, I don't know, that looks like an alien or like a PS5 controller, or like, I'm just trying to think of something. Like there could have been wicked cool stuff that we don't know. There probably was.
I heard something like, for as far as T-Rex skeletons go, we have less than 20 partial fossils of a T-Rex skeleton, but they think there could have been 20 billion that lived on Earth throughout the millions of years that they existed. So think about that. There could have been 20 billion T-Rex bodies that lived on Earth, and we have less than 20 out there.
Well,
that
yeah, I
we
mean,
found.
just really just know about the existence
Yeah.
of it, you know. I guess. I mean, jeez, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the thing between the dinos had feathers versus scales?
100%. So
It was the feathers, you think?
both. So the early dinosaurs, as you can see, the synapsids that we saw that were related to humans, the Gorgonops, the Dimetrodon, they had little whiskers and feathers, but they weren't. Not feathers. They were little whiskers and fur, but not fully covered in a coat like modern day
Yeah.
mammals are. Right. The early dinosaurs were probably very similar, that they were much more scaly and reptilian-like, similar to the crocodilians, which were a different
Yeah.
cousin. They probably looked like that. But as they evolved and they got better at existing, eventually, because they did also switch to warm-blooded as well. Birds are warm-blooded. So they also...
Yeah, even though they lay eggs like a mammal, they are warm-blooded animals.
the T-Rex was possibly warm-blooded, and the Velociraptor was definitely warm-blooded. But they had feathers. T-Rex may have been partially covered in feathers. Velociraptor was fully covered in feathers. So if you want to switch to here, these dinosaurs were some of the last ones to exist before the Great Extinction, before the extinction that they had, the KT extinction event that they died out at.
Oh yeah, they probably had feathered wings there
Mm-hmm.
and had fur on them.
But this is where the dinosaurs became more evolutionary advanced. So the early dinosaurs were something like the Compsognathus, which I'll show you an early one.
Damn.
This one existed in the Triassic period, which was in the early period of dinosaurs. And this type of animal here may have not have been feathered. It was probably more reptilian-like. I wish that they would give me a better picture. It's always hard to get the good stuff.
Wait, that's good. Why do we get a picture of that? I get the gist of
Well,
it.
Yeah.
Well, look at how long it is.
But
Oh,
it
it's
wasn't
not super
large though.
big.
These animals were small.
These are kind of like the compies from Jurassic Park.
They
with
are.
the millions
These
of little...
are the compies from Jurassic Park.
Oh,
So this is a very basic. See how the mouse right next to it?
yeah.
This is a very basic early form of dinosaur. And at the end of their existence, before the extinction happened, you have things like the Velociraptor, which became more evolutionary. Now, these were still only about half the size of a human, maybe. These were probably about 3 or 4 feet long. The raptors from the movie Jurassic Park that they were named after, there was something called the Utah Raptor, which this one was larger than the size of a human. This would have been a terrifying animal to encounter. The Utah Raptor.
Not only are they predators, I think that they were group hunters too.
Yes, they were. These ones were the ones that the Jurassic Park modeled their raptors after. These ones were about 6 feet tall, so it was about the size of an average human, and they were about 15 feet long. You can see how fucking long these things were. And these animals would eventually evolve into the modern day raptors that we have today. You look at the foot of this animal versus the foot of a hawk. If I pull up a hawk's foot,
And their feet are kind of like hands, where they think the feet were wicked opposable,
I don't know
so
why I
they
put
could
foot.
grab onto you like a hand, but with insane claws and strength.
yeah. So I hate how the internet works sometimes. You know, I try typing in hawk's foot, it goes to hawk's football, and it blocks me out from trying to search for the foot again. So okay,
Hawk's foot.
we
Okay,
just want the foot. There we go. Look at the foot. That looks like a dinosaur foot.
yeah, wow, it's like that's. I guess that nature found that's the best foot to have.
So if you can see how these animals looked, this is the hyper evolved version of the raptors. the Velociraptor, the Utahraptor that you just saw, that had been adapted to the environment after the extinction took most of the dinosaurs out. The only lineage that survived of the dinosaurs, the ones that didn't live, were like the Brachiosaurus, the one with the long neck,
Yeah.
the Triceratops. Those have no further lineages in today's evolutionary history. Those died out at the extinction event. They were too large, and they relied on plants, which ended up dying out when the Earth cooled, right? These animals, these raptors, took to the skies, and they ended up living. And you can see what they look like, their feet.
They got the exact same feet as a Velociraptor. They just became smaller, and now they fly.
So that's what happened with the dinosaurs. Now, I wanted to wrap the episode up with something that I myself, even as a science and biology fan, didn't even realize. And I don't know how this came to me, where this idea came to me. I think it was I was actually watching that recent Joe Rogan podcast about them trying to bring back the mammoth. They brought back the dire wolf, which
Yeah.
was the species of wolf that the modern day gray wolf evolved from. So eventually they do want to bring back a woolly mammoth, and they're saying they're going to use the DNA of its closest relative, which is the Asian elephant, right? Today there's 3 species of elephant. There's the Asian elephant, there's the African bush elephant, and the African forest elephant, I believe. 2 different species in Africa.
Yeah.
I thought that all 3 elephant species evolved directly from the woolly mammoth. For some reason, I thought the woolly mammoth was their ancestor, and that, like, humans evolved from a common ancestor of the chimps, and chimps aren't direct ancestors of humans, and that's why we both exist today. I realized that, and this is true, the woolly mammoth was a separate lineage. It was not an ancestor, it was a cousin. The same way humans are cousins with chimps.
Yeah.
The elephants of today did exist at the end of the era where the woolly mammoth still existed. They were cousin species, same way that the humans and the Neanderthals existed at the same time. They were cousin species, but the mammoths went extinct because of the changing environment and overhunting. The elephants ended up surviving and maintaining. At the same time, though, they weren't the only form of elephants that were out there. Check this out. I never realized this, but all elephants evolved from an early species, a pig-like species of animal
What?
that existed here. This was the earliest form of elephant, and these were called the proboscids, apparently. It means nose in Greek or something like that. And this species split off into so many different types of elephant
There's a bunch
species.
of cool ones, dude. Look at the Curvius antium.
So these species, today we only have 3 species that are living from this lineage. The Asian elephant, the African bush elephant, and the African forest elephant. But there was a plethora of all different relatives of the elephant that existed in all different ways. And the mastodon, for some reason, I thought the mastodon was a different name for the woolly mammoth,
Yeah,
but
me
they were
too.
a completely different species. If you pull in here, check this out. So, they're all forms of this proboscidae animal species, right? You can see the earliest ones is this pig-like feature.
Dude, they look like characters that you can collect on a game. This is so cool.
Something happened around this one. This was the earliest one that developed the nose, and their lineage has not changed much since then. Because see, the one before that didn't quite have the same nose.
It
Look
was
at that.
just starting to grow its little nose to be able to wrap around.
It was probably
prey.
to be able to grab, like you said, to be able to grab the trees that were high up. I bet the environment that it grew up in had tall trees where the leaves were right on the top, and it was too heavy to climb, so it grew the nose to be able to reach it.
Wow.
That's
so
probably
instead of extending the animal's legs, for some reason, this one
Evolution
just
wanted
had
to
the
do that.
nose grow so it could reach all those high-hanging fruits.
It looks like this is the first larger one right here, compared to the
Yeah,
size of a
it's
female
starting to
human.
look at how
Yep.
fashionable she is, too.
Now, this is where it gets interesting, though. So after that one that we just saw, this Paleomastodon, which makes sense, paleo would mean before, the Paleomastodon, something happened where they moved across the land bridge from Asia into the Americas,
Yeah.
and they evolved into the mastodons right here. This is
There we go.
mammoth. So these are not mammoths, but they're called Mammutidae, which it is a family of. It looks like it was the the entire elephant species right here, and it was best known for the mastodons, which this is a completely different species than the woolly mammoth. This species, if we can get a good photo of it, it's separate from the mammoth, I guess, because of its teeth. Mastodon actually means breast tooth. It means protruding tooth that sticks out. These animals were better for grazing, apparently, and eating large brush because the tooth could grind it up. But there was less of that in the Arctic, so the mammoths had a flatter tooth to be able to eat smaller, I guess, like grass-like.
Yeah, grazing means like just foraging grass off the ground. Is what's grazing? I'm not even sure what that means. I know like animals and cows do it, but I'm not 100% sure.
So they were different species. It looks like that they all ended up becoming.
Mammoth today.
Yeah, this is the American mastodon that we just saw right there.
Yeah, so they were in North America.
And the mastodons existed well before the mammoths did. The mammoths you can see are further down the line, and this is the modern Asian elephant. The Asian elephant is the closest relative of the woolly mammoth. The woolly mammoth is right here. They were in the same family tree. The Asian elephant is more closely related to the mammoth than the African elephant is. The African elephants are down here. I'm sorry.
So to recap that, he's saying that the Asian, so we get elephants in India, right? You've seen the Indians ride elephants and stuff. Then we have African elephants. He's saying that Asian elephants are closer in DNA to
The
woolly
woolly
mammoth
Yep.
than they are the African elephant.
Yeah, that's the Asian elephant. The African elephant's down here, and there's also two subspecies of African elephant as well.
Bush and forest African?
They are. Let me see.
I wonder what the difference is.
There's a species of elephant. Right here, African forest elephant, separate species. It was one of two living species of the African elephant. It's part of their environment. The bush elephant lives in the savanna. So I just find it very interesting, and that's why they're using elephant DNA to bring back the mammoth, because it's a cousin. It's part of the same family. They're gonna have to rewire and rework the.
So I think it'll be.
modern day.
I think when they explained it, they were saying they're gonna get as much mammoth DNA as possible from these frozen specimens, and then just they need to fill in a few voids. They'll fill it in with Asian elephant. So it's technically not 100% woolly mammoth, but it's gonna have the long fur and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference visually.
This
It'll
is
be
what
very,
the
very much woolly mammoth.
right here is what the flat teeth looked like of the woolly mammoth that I talked about earlier.
Well,
So
it's so different.
The mastodon had the protruding teeth. The mammoth has the flat teeth. It allows them to eat smaller plant life because there wasn't as much plant in the
Tundra.
exactly.
The tundra.
Let me see. This is a good model of what it looked like. Wow, you can really see the difference between. modern elephant.
All we think about is the Ice Age movie when we see this, because
Yeah.
that's what made it famous was that, and it has a little hat too. Isn't that weird?
Well, humans probably caused the extinction of this animal. We probably overhunted them because you got to think back in the caveman days, and not only Homo sapiens are humans, but the Neanderthals would kill them as well. You got to think if a tribe of early humans brought down one of these animals, you would eat for weeks. Your whole tribe would be eaten for weeks, and you didn't need refrigerators because you're already living in a cold environment. So that shit would just.
Shit would probably stay good for a long time.
Wars were probably fought between tribes over these bodies. I bet some people were trying to mooch off of them, like the modern day, people mooching off of us, probably coming up, hey man, let me get a piece, So it's like,
Well, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but it seems like it would taste so good just by looking at the picture of it.
people have eaten mammoth meat because it's been so preserved for only thousands of years. These things existed at the same time the pyramids were being built. That's how early these went extinct.
What are you saying, guys? That the Alaskan boneyard guy, supposedly he pulls out little mammoths and stuff from the ice, and he's saying that they'll take off a little piece of the meat and they'll eat it because it's preserved. I mean, I'm sure it's black and nasty, but
Check this
it's
out.
just been frozen.
This is what the actual preserved
Holy
carcasses look like.
shit, dude! It's
So-
like intact.
Because they're only thousands of years old. The latest woolly mammoths to die were only about 5,000 years old, which is the same time the pyramids were being built.
Look at it. It's like it still has its fur and its
Mhm.
its trunk is a little skinny, but that's definitely a little woolly mammoth.
Yep.
Holy crap! You
So
can still kind of make a rug out of it.
yeah, and there's also other species that we have the potential to possibly clone that relatively went extinct. They were around the same time that humans existed, and we have good fossils of them. People don't really think about the saber-tooth. They call it the saber-tooth tiger, but it's really the saber-tooth cat.
Oh, it wasn't a tiger. It,
It
just
was
the
not an actual
size of a
tiger. It was more related to modern-day bobcats and mountain lions, cougars, than it was to tigers. They were separate. But yeah, I mean, it was called the Smilodon. This is the the fossil of it right here. And because these animals are more in the realm of thousands of years old rather than millions, we have a much better, more intact DNA strain than we
I
do.
just think it's crazy that people were around these things evolving a few thousand years ago. You remember, guys, when you don't like going outside at night alone,
It's a primal fear.
it's because of thousands of years we've been hunted by these saber-toothed tigers and these somewhat dinosaur-like creatures.
This is right here shows the evolution the same way as the elephant did. You can see where the saber-toothed tiger would have split. So it looks like the modern-day feline split here. We have the cougar, and then if we want to go down here, they were on a separate cousin species. So they existed at the same time, roughly, as the modern-day
It's called the
cats did.
Smilodon because of the way it smiles. It shows giant teeth.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. We
Imagine
probably
telling
forgot
it, say cheese.
that. Yeah, so I mean, this is a
I
reconstruction.
get one last quick question.
Yeah.
So I have a golden doodle puppy. Is that thing a dinosaur? Because at
No.
nighttime before bed, when I look at its teeth, and like let me play with its lips and look at its teeth, and she looks like a dinosaur. My dog is a dinosaur.
No. So mammals were also there's something what I said earlier called convergent evolution, where different species will evolve the same traits. That's why there's a theory that aliens may actually look closer to us than we think, because everything is made up of the same stuff, the same
Yeah.
biology, carbon-based. But there could also be separate life forms that we don't know about. But everything on Earth is carbon-based, right?
Yes.
So we're all made of the same stuff. Eventually, we'll have similar traits. Just like eventually, the reptiles evolved to fly the same way the insects did. Eventually, the birds evolved to fly the same way the reptiles did, just like the mammals evolved to fly the same way the birds did, right? Mammals evolved canine teeth the same way that the early dinosaurs did.
Oh yeah.
It's convergent evolution. If something works, a species will adapt it.
You know,
If
I'm
it works-
thinking about B-Dog. We all split up when the Earth was so hostile. If it becomes like not hostile, I wonder if we'll all merge species.
Well, here's something interesting to think about. The future of evolution is not going to be the same as what we've had before. What we've had before is biological evolution, but we're starting to create now with the return of the species of the dire wolf and what they're going to do to humans as well, like gene therapy. We're going to have synthetic evolution. Humans are going to evolve themselves and other species on their own. Synthetic life, species that shouldn't exist, they're going to recreate things that look like dinosaurs again. They're going to be created in the future. And not only that, but the same technology, the gene editing that they're going to use to make these things, they will eventually put into humans. So humans don't get cancer. And plastic surgery will be irrelevant. You want to have a different nose, different face, whatever. No
Yeah.
more ancient sewing and ripping and re-sewing.
Yeah.
You inject something and your face will genetically, from the gene, the DNA level, change and morph. So you will not appear to be the person that you want to be on the inside from plastic surgery. You will literally become that thing. And what it means to be a human is going to fade away. And this is hundreds of years in the future, possibly, maybe sooner. But if you could actually change, wake up every day and inject something new that changes your DNA for that day, you can have blue hair one day, blue eyes one day, red eye, whatever. They change it what you want. What does it mean to be a human anymore if we can just change our appearance at the genetic molecular level on a whim instead of being born that way? You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm thinking? How unnatural is it though if we naturally got to the point where we can make it? Just like a bird makes a nest. Is the nest natural? Yeah. Well, those sticks weren't going to just be there naturally.
We built it ourselves.
The bird made the nest. So if we build it ourselves, how unnatural is it? It's man-made? Well, it used all materials from the earth. Yeah, you burn them down and stuff, but it's like, aren't we natural?
And you got to think about something crazy too. If the whole thing with the AI consciousness is all correct, they are self-aware beings. We made computer chips from rocks, from material on Earth. That means that we gave rocks life. Isn't that crazy to think about?
Holy shit, dude. You know
Humans-
what's crazy about doing this podcast? It just makes you rethink so much shit to the point where it's like, the pagans are right. The rocks have life. I remember them saying, oh, you know, in mythology, the ancient dwarves worshipped rocks, and the rocks had life, and they worshipped them and thought that they were living beings. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. And then you get cobalt, you know, you'll mine the cobalt, you'll assemble it in just the right way, and then you kind of get this thing that gives life. Digital life, which,
Yeah.
you know, we have different opinions on, but it's kind of like everything ends up relating. Just like, I remember I was in CCD, and this kid named Dylan goes, we're in Catholic CCD, and he says, you know what? Because he just was like a nice kid. He just wanted to make everybody happy. He goes, if I wasn't Catholic, then I would believe, like, my second religion, if I had to give this up, would be that all the religions are kind of right. And that everybody, like, dude, like, just shut up. Like, because you're just saying it because it just sounds cool. Like, oh, yeah, you're a hippie or whatever. We're in CCD in elementary school. Then the more you go throughout life, you're like, yeah, I don't think he even knew he was right, but in a way, he's kind of right. All these things kind of make sense in the end. They all have truth to them.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier about how humans, we get stuck in the grind in the 9 to 5 job, thinking this is what life is. You live, you work, you die. But all these species, all these animals that we were talking about, they all lived before us, and they lived in a completely different world, but it was here. It was real. These animals lived, they breathed, they fucked, they ate. You know what I'm saying? They were real animals, and we have the...
B-Dog, the real scare is that we're going to watch some podcasts where people are studying what humans were. They're like, oh, yeah, this was the first animal that was able to make artificial environment. And then they're looking at us, and they're pulling up our shit and looking at them and, like, tracing what they look like and stuff. Yeah.
So, well, you got to think, all right, we could be entering a new era now. Right now, it's called the Holocene that we live in. The previous era of time that was existed, that humans also lived in with the mammoths and with the Neanderthals, was the Pleistocene, right? That era ended when the mammoths went extinct, when the saber-toothed tiger went extinct, and humans became the dominant species on Earth. The next era could be starting right now. It could be something like the Technocene, we'll call it, where AI takes over. We give birth to the technology, and now humans are no longer the dominant species. The technology that humans gave birth to is the next stage in evolution, and that would be the next tree branch that breaks off. You know what I'm saying? Like, the tree goes up. Now we humans created life, and that branch is now something else on the tree of life.
You realize it doesn't make sense that you and I are specifically picked to be a part of this timeline? Like, why would we... You know what I mean? Like, why are we a part of this timeline? I don't get it.
It could be something to do with consciousness in general, and we may only be existing in our consciousness in this timeline because our bodies are latched to this. But consciousness, like we talked about in the medium episode, it could be something that permeates not only our individual bodies, but it could be all connected. And when we dream, meditate, die, take psychedelics, we could be taking a taste of other experiences, other forms of consciousness out there. So me and you, for whatever reason, we're anchored here.
Yeah.
But it's possible, like, people have done it. We can leave, temporarily at least.
You know, I was thinking, if you tell people at work that you're like, nah, I think you're wrong, no. So, you're wrong, no. I'm just me.
Well, this is the funniest thing, Nick, is that there's people out there that you can show all of the fossils, the animals. Shut it off.
If you press both of them at the same time, it screws it up.
Okay.
Hold up. We're good.
I wanted to we'll wrap it up with this because now we've been going on an hour and a half. But I wanted to wrap it up with this, is that the whole point of this podcast and diving back, and we didn't even get into the dinosaur. We mainly stuck with what I wanted to do is I wanted to show the audience the animals that existed before the dinosaurs and the ones that existed after the dinosaurs that weren't dinosaurs, that showed the whole greater part of the picture. When people think ancient animals, think, oh, dinosaur. But do you know how many other animals existed hundreds of millions of years before them that we, again, are closer to the dinosaurs than they were to them? So I find that incredible, and I wanted people to always think, when you're stuck in that grind, when you think that this is all the Earth is and has ever been, it's not, and it's not what it's always going to be. Today we're branching the new tree branch off.
All right, well, guys, remember, do not invest in Enron and don't smoke pot, everybody. So I'd like to sign out. See you later, B-Dog. Bye.
See you, bye.